Most brides worry about rain on their wedding day. I watched my parents walk into my private room wearing head-to-toe black like they were burying me. 200 guests were waiting outside. The nightmare started before my mother even stepped into the main hall. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked straight up to me, looked right at me, and said, "We are mourning the daughter we raised." What they demanded next made my hands shake. But what my husband did on the projector screen after that, that's the part no one in that room will ever forget. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you all are. The mirror in room 204 of the Magnolia estate had a small scratch near the bottom left corner. I noticed it because I notice spaces. It is my job. As an interior designer here in Atlanta, I spend my days picking the right colors, the heavy fabrics, and the soft lighting to make people feel safe in their homes. But sitting in this green velvet chair, wearing my white silk wedding dress, I did not feel safe at all. It was Saturday afternoon. I had gotten married exactly 20 minutes ago. My new husband, Thaddeus, stood by the window. He was adjusting his dark blue tie. Thaddeus was an IT systems architect. He liked fixing broken networks and finding logical patterns because numbers did not lie. I loved him because he was quiet, steady, and he never made me guess how he felt. "The ceremony went perfectly," Thaddeus said. He walked over and rested his warm hand on my bare shoulder. "You look beautiful, Serafina." I smiled, leaning my head against his hand. "Thank you." The flowers looked right. The lighting in the main hall was just like we planned. "I am going to check on the catering staff," he said softly. "I will be back in exactly 5 minutes. Just take a deep breath." He kissed my forehead and slipped out the door. The room became very quiet. I could only hear the low hum of the air conditioner and the ticking of the wall clock. Then, the door opened again. I expected Thaddeus, or maybe my best friend Callista, bringing me a glass of water before the big reception. Instead, my mother, Corinne, walked in. My father, Merritt, stepped in right behind her. And then came my younger sister, Delphine. I stood up, smoothing the front of my white dress. The words got stuck in my throat. They had changed their clothes. During the church ceremony earlier today, my mother wore a soft pink dress. My father had a light gray suit. Delphine wore a pale blue dress. Now they were in pitch black. It was not a fancy, evening party black. My mother wore a thick, heavy wool dress with long sleeves that reached her ankles. It looked like something you would wear to a cold winter funeral. My father wore a dull black suit with a solid black tie. Delphine was in a dark, shapeless black dress, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. The dark fabric seemed to suck all the light out of the bright room. They looked like they were going to bury someone. "Mom?" I whispered. My voice sounded tiny. Why did you change?" My mother closed the door behind her. It made a loud, sharp click. "Sit down, Serafina," she said. Her voice was completely flat. There was no smile, no tears of joy for her newly married daughter, just a cold, hard look. I did not sit. My legs felt like heavy lead, but I stayed standing. "The reception starts in 15 minutes. 200 people are waiting out there. Why are you wearing mourning clothes?" My father looked down at the floor. He put his hands in his pockets and jingled his car keys. Chink, chink. He always did that when he was nervous. He did it when I was 12, right before he told me he could not pay for my art camp because Delphine needed expensive new cheerleader uniforms. "Your mother and I made a decision," my father said to his shiny black shoes. Delphine stepped forward. She was 24, 3 years younger than me. She picked at her fingernails. "It is about the Oak Street house, Serafina. You know I need it." My heart did a painful flip in my chest. The Oak Street house. 3 years ago, I bought a broken, abandoned house on Oak Street for $85,000. I used every single penny of my savings. I spent my nights and weekends tearing up rotten wooden floors, painting walls, fixing rusty pipes, and making it beautiful again. It was my first big solo design project. It was my safety net for the future. Now the market had changed, and it was worth over $300,000. Delphine had a baby 6 months ago. She did not have a job. Her boyfriend had left her. For the past month, my parents had been dropping little hints that I should let Delphine live there. I had told them no. I told them I was going to sell it to help pay for my new life with Thaddeus. "We are not talking about this right now," I said. My breathing got faster. I squeezed my hands into tight fists so they would not shake. "It is my wedding day, and it is your sister's life," my mother snapped. She stepped closer. I could smell her strong, sharp perfume. She has a baby. You are being selfish. You always have everything, Serafina. You have a great career. You have Thaddeus. What does Delphine have? I worked for my career, I said, my voice shaking a little. I bought that house with my own money. I built it. Family shares, my mother said. Her eyes narrowed. She pointed a finger at my face. We are in mourning today. We are mourning the kind, loving daughter we thought we raised. We will not go out to that party. We will sit at the main family table, dressed exactly like this, so all your friends and Thaddeus's family can see our pain. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. Unless, Delphine said softly, looking up with big, watery eyes. Unless you just sign the paper, Serafina. Dad brought it. It just takes 1 second. My father slowly pulled a folded piece of white paper from his inside jacket pocket. They were going to walk out there in funeral clothes, and sit in front of everyone unless I gave away a house I fixed with my own hands. So, let me ask you. If your parents wore funeral clothes to guilt you into giving up the home you built with your very own hands, what would your next move be? Tell me below in the comments. The doorknob turned. Thaddeus walked back into the room. He stopped. He looked at my mother's heavy black dress. He looked at the paper in my father's shaking hand. He looked at my pale, terrified face. Thaddeus did not yell. He did not ask what was going on. He just walked over, stood right next to me, and gently took my shaking hand in his warm one. I see, Thaddeus said quietly. His voice was calm, but his eyes were completely still. Merritt, Corinne, Delphine, I think you should come out to the main hall. We are not moving, my mother said, lifting her chin. Not until she signs. You will want to see what I just put on the big screen, Thaddeus replied, his voice smooth and low. Trust me, my mother Corinne stopped and stared at Thaddeus. The sharp lines around her mouth got tighter. She did not like surprises. She liked to be the one who made the rules. What screen? My mother asked. Her voice was low and cold. Thaddeus did not blink. He just held the heavy wooden door open with his free hand. The hallway outside was bright, but Thaddeus's face was like a quiet shadow. The big projector screen in the main dining hall. The one we set up for the baby pictures. I think you should see what is on it before you sit at your table. My father looked at my mother. He was waiting for her permission. After a few seconds, my mother lifted her chin. She smoothed down her thick black wool dress. Fine, she said. If you want to play games, Thaddeus, we will play. But my mind will not change. She walked out of the room first. My father followed her, his keys still jingling in his pocket. Delphine walked out last. She looked back at me one time, holding her dark, shapeless dress tight around her stomach. Then, they were gone down the hall. I stood frozen in my white silk dress. My breathing was fast and shallow. My chest felt like there was a heavy rock sitting on it. Thaddeus turned to me. He let go of the door and gently held both of my hands. His hands were so warm. Serafina, he said softly, look at me. I looked up into his brown eyes. You are safe, he told me. You do not have to fix this. You do not have to shrink yourself today. Just walk with me. I nodded, but my stomach was spinning. As we walked down the long carpeted hallway of the Magnolia estate, the sounds of the reception grew louder. I could hear the soft jazz band playing a happy song. I could hear the clinking of drinking glasses and the happy laughter of 200 guests. But with every step, a familiar heavy fear pulled me down. I remembered Thanksgiving, 3 years ago, in November 2021. Delphine had borrowed my car without asking and backed it into a brick mailbox. The whole back bumper was crushed. When I got angry, my mother started crying. She pulled me into the kitchen and closed the door. Serafina, please, she had whispered that day, gripping my arm tightly. Delphine is so stressed. Her boyfriend is being mean to her. If you make a big deal out of this, you will ruin the whole holiday. Be the bigger person. Pay for it yourself. Do it for the family. I paid the $800 repair bill. I sat at the Thanksgiving table and smiled, while Delphine ate pie and never even said sorry. That was how our house worked. I was the shock absorber. I took the hits so the rest of the family could ride smoothly. If I spoke up, I was the bad guy. Now we reached the heavy oak double doors of the main hall. Thaddeus pushed them open. The room was stunning. Round tables were covered in white cloths and tall pink roses. Warm, golden lights hung from the ceiling. But as my parents and sister walked to the front of the room, the happy noise began to die. People noticed the black clothes. My mother walked slowly, making sure everyone saw her. My father kept his head down. Delphine looked like a sad, broken girl. The contrast was shocking. Beside them, my friends wore bright yellow, light blue, and soft green dresses. Whispers started to spread across the room like dry leaves catching fire. "Why are they wearing black?" a woman at table 4 whispered. "Did someone die?" a man asked softly. My mother heard the whispers. I saw a tiny proud smile touch the corner of her mouth. She stopped right in front of the head table. She turned to me as Thaddeus and I walked up. "Do you hear them?" my mother whispered to me, her voice dropping so only I could hear. "They are staring. They know something is wrong. Everyone is looking at you, Serafina. If you do not give Delphine the house right now, I will take the microphone. I will tell all your new friends and Thaddeus's family how selfish you are. I will tell them you are throwing your sister and her baby out on the street." My heart pounded in my ears. The old panic took over. My hands shook. I opened my mouth to say okay. I was ready to give up the house just to stop the public shame, just to make the whispering stop. But Thaddeus stepped in front of me. He walked over to the small table where his silver laptop was sitting. It was connected to the giant white projector screen behind the head table. The screen was currently showing our names, Serafina and Thaddeus. Thaddeus picked up the microphone. He tapped it once. Thump. The whole room went completely silent. "Actually, Corinne," Thaddeus said clearly into the microphone, his voice echoing across the quiet, tense room, "I am going to save you the trouble." He pressed one single button on his laptop keyboard. The giant white screen flashed. The bright light spilled across the dark room, reflecting in the glasses on the tables. I expected to see a baby picture of me with missing front teeth, or a photo of Thaddeus and me at the beach. Instead, the screen showed a clean, clear screenshot of an email. The text was huge. Everyone in the room could read it. A heavy, dead silence fell over the 200 guests. At table 7, someone dropped a silver fork on a plate. Clink. It sounded like a gunshot. My eyes moved to the screen. Date: Wednesday, August 12, 2024. 2:14 p.m. From Merritt. Evans1965@mail.com. To Vance Holdings at atlantacashhomes.com. Subject: 412 Oak Street, final cash offer. The message below was short. "Dear Mr. Vance, we accept your cash offer of $285,000 for the Oak Street house. My daughter Serafina is signing a quitclaim deed over to me this Saturday at the wedding, under the impression we are placing the house in a family trust for Delphine. We will bring the signed deed to your office on Monday morning at 9 a.m. to get the check. Please have the paperwork ready. Best, Merritt Evans." I stopped breathing. The air in the room felt too thick, too heavy to pull into my lungs. I blinked, reading the huge black letters again and again. $285,000. Cash offer. Monday morning. My chest felt like it was breaking open. They did not want the house so Delphine and her 6-month-old baby could have a safe place to sleep. They did not care about a backyard for the baby to play in. They were going to sell it. They were going to take the house I built with my bleeding hands and my late nights, and they were going to sell it to a stranger for cash, 2 days after my wedding. So tell me, if you stood in your wedding dress with everyone staring at a giant screen exposing their lies, would you have covered for them or not? Drop your answer in the comments. My father's hand froze inside his pocket. The jingling of his keys stopped completely. His face turned the color of old wet paper. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She stared at the screen, her dark eyes wide. Thaddeus stood quietly next to me. He held the microphone close to his mouth. "You came to our apartment last Thursday, Merritt," Thaddeus said. His voice was not angry. It was just very steady, like a doctor explaining an X-ray. "You asked to borrow my iPad to check the football scores, but you forgot to log out of your email. I am an IT architect. I noticed digital footprints. When I saw the subject line about Serafina's house, I clicked it." "Thaddeus," my father croaked. He took a step back, bumping into a chair. "You lied to her," Thaddeus continued. He looked directly at my mother in her heavy black mourning dress. "You used Delphine's baby to make Serafina feel guilty. You wore funeral clothes to her wedding to scare her into signing a paper, but you just wanted the money." My mother finally found her voice. She stepped forward, her face turning red. "This is private family business," she hissed, pointing a shaking finger at Thaddeus. "You have no right to show this. Serafina, tell him to turn it off." I looked at my mother, then I looked at Delphine. Delphine was staring at the floor. She was biting her bottom lip. "Delphine?" I whispered. My voice was broken. Did you know? Did you know they were selling it?" Delphine looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, but she did not look sorry. She looked angry. "Dad's hardware store is failing, Serafina," Delphine said quickly, her words rushing out. He is $150,000 in debt. The bank is going to take his shop next month. And I have a baby. We needed that money. You already have a good job. You have Thaddeus. You don't need a $300,000 house. It is just money to you. To us, it is survival. The pain in my chest turned into a sharp, freezing block of ice. You already have a good job. They thought my money was just magic. They did not see the weekends I spent covered in white drywall dust. They did not see me crying in my car in 2024 because I did not have enough money to buy groceries after paying the plumber. They just saw a number they could take. You were going to let me feel guilty forever, I said softly. Tears finally spilled over my eyelashes, hot and fast. You dressed in black, to ruin the happiest day of my life, just to pay off a bank loan. We are your parents, my mother shouted. Her voice echoed in the silent hall. Guests were shifting in their seats. Some were whispering behind their hands. You owe us, Serafina. We raised you. You are supposed to help your family when we are drowning. I am not your bank, I whispered. I wiped a tear from my cheek with the back of my shaking hand. Thaddeus reached out and touched my lower back. The warmth of his hand gave me strength. I stood up a little taller. The screen stays on, I said. My voice was louder this time, clearer. My mother glared at me. Her chest was moving up and down fast. She looked around the room. She saw Thaddeus's parents looking at her with pure disgust. She saw my friends shaking their heads. There was no place for her to hide the truth anymore. The mask was gone. My mother looked around the silent, staring room. For the first time in my entire life, I saw her look small. She saw my college roommates whispering to each other. She saw Thaddeus's boss shaking his head. The heavy black morning dress she wore to scare me did not look powerful anymore. Under the bright, happy lights of the Magnolia estate, she just looked foolish and mean. Merritt, my mother snapped. She grabbed my father's arm so hard her knuckles turned white. We are leaving. I will not stay in a room where my own daughter disrespects us like this. My father did not argue. He looked down at the shiny wooden floor. His shoulders were slumped forward like a tired, defeated man. He turned and started walking toward the heavy oak doors. He did not look back at me, not even once. Delphine grabbed her small black purse from the nearest table. She looked at me, her eyes red and angry. You could have just saved us, Serafina, she hissed. Then, she turned and ran after them. The heavy double doors swung open. My parents and my sister walked out into the warm Atlanta afternoon. The doors slowly swung shut behind them with a soft thud. They were gone. The people who were supposed to love me most had just walked out of my wedding. I stood there, staring at the empty space where they had been. I was an interior designer. My brain naturally fixed things. I saw the perfect symmetry of the room, the white tables, the pink roses, the golden lights. And right in the front, at the main family table, there were 3 empty chairs. The perfect picture was broken, and I knew, deep in my bones, that I could never fix it again. Suddenly, a woman stepped out from the crowd. It was Aunt Elowen, my father's older sister. She wore a dark green dress and held a glass of water. She walked up to the head table. She did not look at the giant screen that still showed the secret email. She only looked at me. Serafina, sweetie, Aunt Elowen whispered softly. Her voice sounded kind, but her words felt like little needles. You know how your father gets when he is stressed about money. His blood pressure has been so high. Did you really have to embarrass them in front of all these strangers? I stared at her. The cold ice in my chest started to crack. You knew, I said. My voice was just a breath. You knew he was losing the hardware store. Aunt Elowen looked away for a second. She took a sip of her water. Well, yes, he told me last month. But Serafina, family is family. We cover for each other. He just needed a little help. You didn't have to be so cruel. I felt sick to my stomach. This was how my family worked. This was the secret game they all played. My father makes a terrible business mistake. My mother uses Delphine's baby as an excuse. And Aunt Elowen expects me to pay the bill and keep quiet, so everyone can pretend we are a perfect, happy family. Cruel? Thaddeus stepped forward. His voice was not loud, but it was very firm. Elowen, they came to my wife's wedding in funeral clothes to force her to sell her only home. Please go back to your seat, or you can leave with them. Aunt Elowen's mouth dropped open. She looked at Thaddeus's serious, unmoving face. She put her water glass down on a table and quickly walked back to her seat, muttering under her breath. Thaddeus turned to the crowd. He picked up the microphone again. His hand brushed against mine, and our fingers locked together. Thank you all for your patience, Thaddeus said to the 200 guests. His voice was warm and smooth, like nothing bad had just happened. Serafina and I are so grateful you are here to celebrate our new life together. The catering staff is bringing out the main course now. Please, eat, drink, and enjoy the music." He nodded to the jazz band in the corner. The piano player quickly started a soft, upbeat song. The waiters pushed through the kitchen doors carrying huge silver trays of roasted chicken and vegetables. Slowly, the guests started talking again. The heavy tension in the room began to fade away, replaced by the clinking of plates and glasses. But I was still shaking. Thaddeus put the microphone down. He closed his laptop and the giant white screen turned blank. The ugly email was gone. "Come with me," Thaddeus whispered in my ear. He led me away from the front table, through a side door, and back into the quiet hallway. We walked until we reached a small, empty coat room. He closed the door. The loud music became a soft hum through the walls. The moment we were alone, my knees gave out. I did not fall to the floor because Thaddeus caught me. He wrapped his arms around me tightly. I buried my face in his dark blue suit jacket. I did not sob loudly. I just cried silent, heavy tears that soaked into his shirt. "They actually left," I whispered against his chest. It hurt to say the words out loud. "On my wedding day, they left." "I know," Thaddeus said softly. He stroked my hair. He did not tell me it was going to be okay. He did not tell me to stop crying. He just held me tight and let me feel the sharp, terrible pain of the wound. "I have no family now, Thaddeus," I cried, holding onto his jacket like a person drowning in the ocean. Thaddeus pulled back just enough to look at my wet, ruined makeup. He reached up and gently wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "That is not true, Serafina," he said gently, looking deep into my eyes. "Look at me. I am your family now. We are your family." It was Tuesday morning, exactly 24 days after the wedding. Outside the large glass windows of my office at Crescent Interiors in downtown Atlanta, a soft September rain was falling. I stood by my large wooden desk, running my fingers over a square of heavy, dark blue velvet. I was supposed to be picking fabrics for a client's new living room, but my mind was empty. Since the day my parents walked out of the Magnolia estate in their black clothes, my phone had been completely silent. No angry texts, no missed calls, just a deep, heavy silence. I was exiled. They had cut me out of the family like a bad branch on a tree. The door to my office clicked open. Callista, my best friend and the real estate agent who helped me buy the Oak Street house, walked in. She was wearing a sharp gray suit and holding 2 large paper cups of coffee. "Flat white, extra hot, just how you like it," Callista said. She set the warm cup on my desk. "Thank you," I said, offering a small, tired smile. I sat down in my rolling chair. "I needed this. I cannot seem to focus today." Callista did not smile back. She pulled up a chair and sat across from me. She placed a yellow manila folder on my desk next to the coffee. Her face was very serious. "I did something," Callista said quietly. "I know you told me to just let it go, but I am your friend, Serafina, and I protect my people. I logged into the county real estate database this morning. I wanted to make sure your parents did not try to file any fake property deeds against your Oak Street house." My stomach tightened. I stopped breathing for a second. "Did they?" "No," Callista said quickly. She opened the folder. "Your house is 100% safe. Your name is the only one on the title. But, while I was in the system, I searched your dad's name. I checked the public records for the hardware store and their house on Maple Drive." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was an official county document. There was a red stamp in the top right corner that said Notice of Trustee Sale. "What is this?" I asked. My hands felt cold as I picked up the paper. "It is a foreclosure auction notice," Callista explained gently. "Your dad's hardware store is failing, yes. But that is not the big secret, Serafina. He stopped paying the mortgage on his hardware store 14 months ago. And he stopped paying the mortgage on the family house on Maple Drive 10 months ago. This isn't just a warning. The bank is auctioning the house." I stared at the numbers on the paper. Total amount due, $182,450 in debt. Auction date, September 30, 2024. "They are losing their house," I whispered. The words felt like dry sand in my mouth. "Yes," Callista nodded. She leaned forward and pointed to another paper in the folder. "But look at this. This is the public record of a loan application your dad submitted to a private bank in July. Look at the cosigner line." I moved my eyes down the page. There, printed in neat black letters, was my name, Serafina Evans. Next to it was a blank space for a signature. "He tried to use my name to get a new loan?" I asked, my voice shaking. "He tried," Callista said, her voice dropping lower. But the bank rejected it because he applied online using your social security number, and the automated system flagged the IP address, requiring you to verify in person with your ID. That was in July. When that failed, they came up with the plan to sell your Oak Street house to Vance Holdings for cash. A wave of dizziness hit me. I leaned back in my chair, pressing my hands against my face. The puzzle pieces finally fit together. The sudden pressure to let Delphine live in my house. The guilt trips, the black funeral clothes at the wedding. It was never about Delphine's baby. They needed $182,000 to save their own house by the end of September. They were going to sell my house, take the cash, pay their debt, and leave both me and my sister with nothing. They lied to me, but they also lied to Delphine. My desk phone buzzed. It was Thaddeus. I pressed the speaker button. "Hey." Thaddeus's calm, deep voice filled the room. "I just got off the phone with the credit bureau. I put a hard freeze on your social security number, just like we talked about last night. Nobody can open a loan in your name now." "Thaddeus," I said. A fresh tear slid down my cheek, but it was not a tear of sadness. It was shock. "Callista is here." She pulled the public property records. "What did she find?" Thaddeus asked. I told him everything. I told him about the missed mortgage payments, the forged loan application, and the September 30 deadline. For a long moment, the speakerphone was quiet. Thaddeus was processing the data. "They were going to let Delphine think she was moving in, just to get you to sign the deed," Thaddeus finally said. His voice was cold and sharp. "And then they were going to sell it out from under her too." "Yes," Callista said, crossing her arms. "They played both of their daughters." I looked at the yellow folder. For 3 weeks, I had been crying because my parents threw me away. I thought I was the broken one, but sitting here in my office, looking at Callista's worried face, and listening to Thaddeus's steady voice on the phone, something inside me shifted. My parents were drowning because of their own lies, and they were willing to push me underwater just so they could breathe. "Thank you, Callista," I said. I wiped my face. I sat up straight. "And thank you, Thaddeus. What do you want to do, Serafina?" Thaddeus asked gently. I looked at the heavy rain hitting the window. I was no longer the little girl who paid for broken mailboxes to keep the peace. I was a grown woman, and I had a new family who actually protected me. "Nothing," I said, my voice completely steady. "We do absolutely nothing. Their deadline is in 3 weeks. We let them face it." The Oak Street house smelled like fresh sawdust and linen white paint. It was Saturday afternoon, 3 days after Callista showed me the yellow folder. I was kneeling on the hardwood floor in the living room, carefully taping the baseboards with blue painter's tape. As an interior designer, I know that preparation is everything. If you rush the tape, the paint bleeds, and the sharp lines are ruined. You have to build strong borders. Across the room, Thaddeus was standing on a small ladder. He was holding a screwdriver, installing a new smart home security system. He carefully connected the tiny red and black wires. He was building our borders too. The front door was propped open to let the warm September breeze blow through the house. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the wooden floor. I stopped tearing the blue tape. I looked up. Delphine was standing in the doorway. She was holding her 6-month-old baby, Orion, on her hip. She wore a faded gray sweatshirt, and there were dark, heavy bags under her eyes. She looked incredibly tired. She did not look like the angry girl who yelled at me at the wedding. She just looked lost. "You changed the locks," Delphine said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I slowly stood up and wiped my dusty hands on my jeans. "Yes," I said. "I did." Thaddeus stopped screwing the wire into the wall. He did not say a word, but he stepped down from the ladder and stood quietly in the corner of the room. He was giving me space, but letting me know he was there. Delphine bounced baby Orion on her hip. The baby made a soft, happy sound. "Dad is selling his favorite watch today," she said, looking down at her old sneakers. "Mom cries all day in her bedroom. They are talking about selling the dining table. I came to ask you, Serafina, how can you sleep at night? Why are you doing this to them?" I looked at my younger sister. A month ago, her words would have crushed me. I would have felt a heavy, burning guilt in my stomach. I would have reached for my wallet. But today, I just felt a deep, quiet sadness for her. I walked over to the kitchen island. My leather work bag was sitting on the marble counter. I unzipped it and pulled out the yellow manila folder Callista had given me. "I am not doing anything to them, Delphine," I said. I walked back and gently held the folder out to her. "They did this to themselves, and they tried to use both of us to fix it." Delphine frowned. She shifted Orion to her other hip and took the folder with her free hand. "What is this?" "Open it," I said softly. "Look at the first page. It is a public county record." Delphine opened the folder. Her eyes moved over the paper. I watched her read the red stamp. Notice of trustee sale. I watched her eyes find the numbers. $182,450 in bonds. They are losing the Maple Drive house?" Delphine whispered. Her hand started to shake. "But Mom said Dad's business just had a slow month. She said they just needed a little help." "Look at the second page, Delphine," I said. My voice was very gentle but firm. She flipped the paper. It was the printed email from Thaddeus's laptop, the cash offer for my house. "Read the date they agreed to sell it," I told her. Delphine's eyes scanned the black text. "Monday morning, 2 days after your wedding." She stopped. Her breathing got faster. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and confused. "But Mom told me to pick out paint colors for Orion's nursery last week. She said this was going to be my house. She said you were just being stubborn." "Delphine," I said, stepping a little closer. "If I had signed that paper at my wedding, they were going to drive to Vance Holdings on Monday morning. They were going to sell this house for $285,000 cash to pay off their own debts. You and Orion were never going to live here. There was no nursery." Delphine stared at me. The paper slipped out of her fingers and fluttered to the dusty wooden floor. She opened her mouth, but she could not breathe properly. She looked like someone had just hit her in the stomach. All the anger left her face, leaving only pure, empty shock. For her entire life, Delphine had believed my parents. She thought they protected her. She thought I was the selfish older sister keeping a big house all to myself while she struggled with a new baby. "No," Delphine whispered, shaking her head. Tears filled her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. "No, Mom wouldn't do that to Orion. She wouldn't make me plan a bedroom for him and then. They were drowning, Delphine," I said. I reached out and gently touched her shoulder. She did not pull away. "When people are drowning, they will grab anyone to stay above the water. Even their own kids." Delphine started to cry. It was a loud, ugly, painful cry. Baby Orion got scared and started crying too. I did not hesitate. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around my sister and her baby. She rested her head on my shoulder and sobbed, holding onto my shirt just like I had held onto Thaddeus's jacket at the wedding. Thaddeus quietly walked over. He picked up the dropped papers, placed them back in the yellow folder, and set it on the counter. Then he brought over a clean bottle of water from our cooler and set it near us. We stood there in the empty living room for a long time. The smell of fresh paint surrounded us. When Delphine finally stopped crying, she pulled back and wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "What do we do, Serafina?" she asked. Her voice sounded like a scared little girl. "Their deadline is September 30. Where are they going to go?" "I don't know," I said honestly. I looked her right in the eyes. "But I am not giving them my house, and you are not going to fight their battles anymore. We cannot fix their mistakes." Delphine looked around the bright, clean room I had built. Then, she looked at the yellow folder on the counter. Slowly, she nodded. The secret was fully out. My parents had lost their mask, and now, they had lost their enabler. It was Thursday, September 17th, 2024. Exactly 13 days before the bank would take my parents' house on Maple Drive. I was sitting in a red vinyl booth at the Silver Skillet, a noisy, old diner in downtown Atlanta. The air smelled strongly of fried bacon and black coffee. Across from me sat Delphine. Baby Orion was asleep in his car seat next to her, covered with a soft yellow blanket. Delphine looked completely different from the girl at my wedding. Her hair was messy, tied in a quick knot. She was wearing the same gray sweatshirt from a few days ago. But it was her eyes that caught my attention. The angry, entitled look was completely gone. In its place was just deep, heavy exhaustion. "They are pretending, Serafina," Delphine said softly. She traced the edge of her coffee cup with her finger. "Dad goes to the hardware store every morning like normal, even though the shelves are almost empty. Mom is packing their expensive china plates into boxes. She told the neighbors they decided to downsize because the house is too big now. She refuses to say the word foreclosure." I took a slow sip of my hot tea. The warm liquid felt good against my tight throat. "Has Mom talked about me?" I asked carefully. Delphine looked down. "She calls Aunt Elowen every night. She tells everyone you abandoned the family when Dad just needed a tiny bridge loan. She says you are letting your own blood become homeless just to punish her." A month ago, hearing that would have made me sick. I would have rushed over to Maple Drive, crying, begging them to understand my side. But today, sitting in the diner, I just felt a quiet, sad peace. I could not control the story my mother told people. I could only control my own reality. I brought something for you, I said. I reached into my leather work bag and pulled out a blue paper folder. I slid it across the sticky diner table. Delphine looked at the blue folder. She did not touch it right away. Serafina, I already told you. I am not asking for your house anymore. I understand now. I know, I said gently. Open it. Slowly, Delphine opened the folder. Inside was a crisp white lease agreement for a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe, quiet neighborhood in North Atlanta. The rent was $1,100 a month. Thaddeus and I sat down with our budget last night, I explained, keeping my voice very calm and steady. We paid the $1,100 security deposit. And we paid for the first month of rent. The keys are in the front pocket. You and Orion can move in today. Delphine stared at the paper. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. A tear dropped onto the clean white page. But, she whispered, her voice cracking, how will I pay for the second month? I don't have a job, Serafina. I don't have anything. Turn to the second page, I said. She turned the page. It was a printed email from my boss at Crescent Interiors. My company needs a part-time showroom assistant, I told her. You will answer phones, organize the fabric samples, and help clients find the right wallpaper books. It pays $18 an hour. You work Tuesday to Friday, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. I already found a daytime babysitter in your new building who charges $10 an hour. That leaves you enough money to pay your rent and buy groceries. Delphine covered her mouth with both hands. Her shoulders started to shake. She was crying, but it was not the ugly, painful cry from the empty house. This was a soft, overwhelmed cry of true relief. I am not giving you a free ride, Delphine, I said, leaning forward. I wanted to make sure she understood the boundary. Thaddeus and I are not your bank. This is a ladder. We are helping you climb out of the hole, but you have to do the walking yourself. I will, Delphine sobbed, wiping her wet face. I will do the work, Serafina. I promise. I am so tired of the secrets. I just want to be safe. Then you are safe, I said softly. For the first time in our adult lives, my sister and I were not competing for our parents' approval. We were just two women sitting in a diner, trying to build something real. Suddenly, Delphine's cell phone buzzed loudly on the table. The screen lit up. Incoming call, Aunt Elowen. Delphine looked at the phone, then looked at me. Her hand trembled as she reached out and let the call go to voicemail. A minute later, a small ding signaled a new audio message. Delphine pressed the speaker button so we could both hear it. Delphine, it is Aunt Elowen. The voice came through the phone, sounding sharp and urgent. Listen to me. Your father had a minor heart scare this morning. The stress is literally killing him. I am hosting a mandatory family dinner this Sunday at my house, 6 p.m. You need to be there. And tell your sister she needs to be there too. It is time to end this nonsense before we bury your father. The message ended with a loud click. The diner suddenly felt very cold. The smell of bacon faded, replaced by the old familiar knot in my stomach. My father. A heart scare. Delphine looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. Serafina, what if he is really sick? I looked at the blue folder on the table. The rebuilding was starting, but the past was not done with us yet. The final trap was set. It was Sunday, September 20, 2024, at exactly 5:55 p.m. Thaddeus parked his gray Honda Accord in front of Aunt Elowen's large brick house on Pinecrest Road. I sat in the passenger seat. My hands were freezing cold. I rubbed my sweaty palms against my dark blue jeans. My stomach was twisting into tight knots. Thaddeus turned off the engine. The car became very quiet. He did not open his door. He just looked at me. We do not have to go inside, Serafina, Thaddeus said gently. His voice was a safe, steady anchor. If you are not ready, I will start the car right now. We can go home, order a pizza, and turn off our phones. I looked out the window at Aunt Elowen's house. The front porch light was shining brightly. It looked like a warm, welcoming family home. But to me it felt like a trap waiting to snap shut. No. I took a deep, shaky breath. If I run away tonight, they will just keep hunting me. They will show up at my office. They will keep using Dad's health to pull me back in. I have to face them. Thaddeus nodded once. Okay, remember our rule. The second they start screaming, we walk out the front door. We do not negotiate with people who shout. Okay, I agreed. We walked up the concrete path. Before I could even knock, Aunt Elowen opened the heavy wooden door. She wore a flowery yellow dress and a very tight, fake smile. Serafina, Thaddeus, Aunt Elowen said loudly, acting like nothing bad had happened at the wedding. She stepped back to let us in. Come in, come in. The pot roast is almost ready. The house smelled like cooked beef and strong vanilla candles. I walked into the living room. My father, Merritt, was sitting in a big brown leather recliner. He was wearing loose gray sweatpants and an old t-shirt. He looked tired. My mother, Corinne, was sitting on the sofa next to him, gently rubbing his arm. She looked up at me with cold, sharp eyes. In the corner of the room, Delphine sat in a small wooden rocking chair. She was holding baby Orion tight against her chest. She looked up at me, and I gave her a tiny nod. She nodded back. We were a team now. Merritt, look who is here, my mother said softly, treating my father like he was made of thin glass. My father slowly turned his head. Hello, Serafina, he mumbled. He reached out and picked up a handful of salted peanuts from a glass bowl on the side table. He popped them into his mouth and washed them down with a sip of regular Coca-Cola. Nehadius leaned down slightly. His lips barely moved as he whispered in my ear. Salted nuts and a sugary soda. If his blood pressure was truly at a crisis level, a real doctor would forbid that immediately. It is a show, Serafina. The last tiny bit of guilt in my heart disappeared. Nehadius was right. Numbers and facts do not lie. My father might be stressed, but they were using his heart scare as a weapon to get my money. Aunt Elowen clapped her hands together. All right, everyone. Let's not pretend we are just here for dinner. We need to clear the air. We are family, and family sticks together. She walked over and stood behind my father's chair. She looked right at me. Serafina, Aunt Elowen started, her voice sounding sweet but dripping with poison. Your father's heart cannot take this stress. The hardware store is struggling. They are behind on a few bills. It happens to the best of us. But you caused a huge scene at your wedding, and now you are ignoring your own mother. You need to apologize, and we need to figure out how you are going to help them fix this mess. I stood perfectly still. I did not yell. I did not cry like I used to. Aunt Elowen, I said, my voice completely flat and calm. Dad is $182 and $450 in debt. The bank is foreclosing on their Maple Drive house in 10 days. It is not just a few bills. Aunt Elowen's fake smile dropped completely. She looked at my mother in pure shock. Corinne, is that true? You told me it was just a $20,000 business loan. My mother's face turned bright red. She jumped up from the sofa. That is private, she yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. How dare you bring our private numbers into this house, Serafina? You brought Aunt Elowen into it, I replied, crossing my arms. You asked her to be the judge. I just gave her the actual facts. You selfish brat, my mother screamed. The mask was completely gone now. She stepped toward me, her hands balled into fists. You have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in that Oak Street house. All you had to do was sign the paper. We gave you life. We fed you. You owe us. Leave her alone, Mom. The voice was quiet, but it stopped my mother in her tracks. Everyone turned to look at the corner. Delphine stood up, holding baby Orion. Her hands were shaking, but she stood tall. Do not yell at Serafina, Delphine said, her voice growing stronger. She gave me an apartment. She got me a job. She saved me while you were trying to use my baby to steal her house. Serafina is the only one in this room who actually acts like family. My mother gasped. She grabbed her chest like she could not breathe. My father dropped his handful of peanuts on the floor. The trap had just broken wide open. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the ticking of the large grandfather clock in Aunt Elowen's hallway. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Aunt Elowen looked back and forth between my mother and Delphine. The fake, bright smile was completely gone from her face. She looked down at my father, who was staring at the scattered, salty peanuts on the rug. Merritt, Aunt Elowen said. Her voice was completely different now. It was sharp, tight, and cold. Is it true? Did you try to sell Serafina's house behind her back to pay off a $180,000 debt? My father did not look up. He leaned forward and rubbed his face hard with both of his hands. It was a cash offer, Elowen, he mumbled into his palms. It was not stealing. I was going to pay her back. Someday, when the hardware store got back on its feet. Pay her back with what? Thaddeus asked quietly from beside me. He did not sound angry. He just sounded logical. Your business accounts are empty, Merritt. You forged Serafina's name on a bank loan application in July. Callista pulled the public records. Aunt Elowen gasped loudly. She took 2 big steps away from my father's chair, looking at him like she had just realized he was a stranger. You forged her name? Merritt, what is wrong with you? You told me you just needed a tiny $20,000 bridge loan to fix the roof at the store. You lied to me too. I was trying to save our lives," my father suddenly yelled. His voice cracked. He finally looked up, and I saw real, wet tears in his eyes. He did not look like a scary monster or an evil mastermind. He just looked like a pathetic, broken, old man who had carried a heavy lie for too long. "My father built that hardware store," my father cried, hitting his chest with his hand. "I could not let the bank take it. I am the man of the house. I am supposed to fix it. I just needed more time." "By throwing your own daughters under the bus?" Aunt Elowen snapped. She crossed her arms, shaking her head in deep disgust. "I invited Serafina into my home to force her to apologize to you. I feel like an absolute fool." My mother Corinne panicked. She saw that she was losing Aunt Elowen, her biggest enabler, her safest audience. She quickly walked over and grabbed my father's shoulder, trying to look strong. "We did it for the family," my mother cried. Her voice was wild and messy. "Serafina is young. She can buy another house. She has Thaddeus's salary now. We are old, Elowen. We have nowhere to go. Delphine, honey, please." My mother turned to the corner, holding her hands out. "You do not know what you are saying. Serafina brainwashed you. Come here." Delphine stepped backward, bumping into the wall. She wrapped her arms tighter around baby Orion. "No, Mom," Delphine said, her voice shaking but very clear. "Serafina gave me a real job. You gave me a fake nursery." My mother's face twisted in real, raw pain. She reached her hand out further, her fingers trembling, but Delphine physically turned her body away. For the first time in my entire life, I saw the complete truth. My parents were not powerful. They were not in control. They were just deep in debt, drowning in shame, and too proud to ask for honest help. They chose to lie and manipulate because it was easier than admitting to their family that they had failed. I looked at my father. He looked so small. I looked at my mother. She looked terrified. "Mom, Dad," I said. My voice was very soft. They both looked at me. The whole room was perfectly still. "I forgive you for being scared," I told them honestly. The heavy dark rock that had lived in my chest for 20 years finally cracked open and melted away into nothing. "But I do not forgive you for what you tried to do to me. I am not angry anymore. I am just done." I turned to Thaddeus. I gave him a small nod. He immediately put his warm hand gently on my lower back. "We are leaving now," I said to the room. I turned around and started walking toward the front door. Thaddeus walked right beside me. "Serafina, wait," my father called out from his chair. His voice sounded like a scared little boy's. "Please, the bank is coming on September 30th. Where are we supposed to live?" I stopped with my hand on the cold brass doorknob. I turned my head slightly, looking back into the living room at the two people who raised me. "I am an interior designer, Dad," I said gently. "I build safe spaces, but I cannot build a house on top of lies. You have 10 days to figure it out." I turned the knob, pulled the heavy door open, and walked out into the cool September night air. The cool September night air hit my face the moment I stepped off Aunt Elowen's front porch. It felt incredibly clean. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs completely. For the first time in 20 years, my chest did not feel tight. We walked down the concrete path to the gray Honda Accord. Thaddeus opened the passenger door for me. I slid onto the dark cloth seat. He closed the door gently, walked around to the driver's side, and got in. He did not start the car right away. He just sat in the quiet dark, his hands resting on the steering wheel. He looked at me, studying my face in the dim light of the street lamps. "Are you okay?" Thaddeus asked softly. I looked down at my hands. They were not shaking anymore. I expected to feel completely broken, like a shattered glass window. I just walked away from my own mother and father. But I did not feel broken. I felt a strange, quiet sadness, like watching a sad movie that was finally over. "I am okay," I said honestly. "It hurts, Thaddeus. It really hurts to know they never truly saw me, but I am not going to carry their heavy bags anymore." Thaddeus smiled, a small, proud smile. He turned the key, and the engine hummed to life. The warm heater blew over my frozen feet. As we pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The bright screen showed a new text message. It was from Delphine. "Aunt Elowen yelled at Mom and Dad to leave her house. She is very angry about the lies. She is driving Orion and me back to my new apartment right now. Thank you, Serafina, for everything." I read the text twice. I locked the screen and slipped the phone back into my pocket. "Delphine got out," I told Thaddeus. "Aunt Elowen is taking her home." "Good," Thaddeus said, keeping his eyes on the road. The boundary is holding. The next few days moved very fast. It was Friday, September 25th, 2024. Exactly 5 days before the bank would lock the doors of my parents' house on Maple Drive. I was at my office at Crescent Interiors. The morning sun was shining through the large glass windows. I was sipping my hot green tea and looking over a building plan for a new client. The door to the main showroom was open. I could hear the soft, polite voice of my sister. I quietly stood up and walked to the doorway. Delphine was standing by the large sample tables. She was wearing a neat, dark blue sweater and clean black pants. Her messy hair was now brushed and tied in a nice, smooth ponytail. She was helping Mrs. Winslow, one of our oldest clients, sort through heavy books of kitchen wallpaper. If your kitchen gets a lot of morning sunlight, this soft yellow pattern will make the room feel very warm, Delphine explained gently, pointing to a page. But if you want something easier to clean near the stove, we should look at the vinyl textures. Mrs. Winslow smiled widely. Oh, you are so helpful, dear. Let's look at the vinyl ones. I watched my sister smile back. It was a real bright smile. The dark, heavy bags under her eyes were starting to fade. She was sleeping in a safe place. She was earning her own money. She did not have to pretend to be a helpless little girl anymore. My desk phone buzzed, breaking my thoughts. I walked back into my office and picked it up. Serafina Evans, I answered. Hey, Thaddeus's voice came through the receiver. He sounded very serious. I just got off the phone with Callista. She drove past your parents' house on Maple Drive on her way to a house showing. My grip on the phone tightened. What did she see? They are having an estate sale, Thaddeus said quietly. Right now, on the front lawn. Callista said they have tables set up with your mother's fancy china plates, your father's golf clubs, and the living room furniture. They are trying to sell everything they can carry. A cold feeling washed over my arms. An estate sale. They actually failed, I whispered to myself. Yes, Thaddeus replied. They did not find a secret pile of money. Nobody came to save them. The bank is going to take the house on Wednesday. I looked out my office window at the busy Atlanta traffic. My parents always acted like they were untouchable. They always bent the rules and expected someone else to pay the fine. Now the bill was finally due, and their pockets were completely empty. Thaddeus, I said slowly. I need to go see it. Are you sure? He asked. You do not need to hurt yourself, Serafina. I am not going to talk to them, I explained, putting my teacup down on the wooden desk. I just need to see it with my own eyes. I need my brain to know that this is real. Okay, Thaddeus said. I will leave the office right now. I will pick you up in 20 minutes. Exactly 20 minutes later, Thaddeus's gray Honda Accord turned onto Maple Drive. The street was lined with tall, old oak trees with orange and yellow autumn leaves. It looked like a picture from a magazine. But as we got closer to my parents' house at number 42, the perfect picture broke. Thaddeus parked the car slowly on the opposite side of the street. He turned off the engine. We did not get out. I just rolled down my window to let the crisp afternoon air in, and I watched. The front lawn was covered with cheap plastic folding tables. On the tables were all the things that used to make my mother feel important. Her delicate white china plates with the gold edges, my father's heavy, expensive golf clubs, the big wooden clock that used to sit in our hallway. Everything had a little green price sticker on it. I watched my mother, Corinne, sitting in a cheap canvas lawn chair. She was wearing a plain brown sweater. She looked down at the grass, refusing to make eye contact with the neighbors who were walking around and touching her things. My father, Merritt, was standing near the driveway. A man in a blue baseball cap was holding my father's shiny red lawnmower. The man pointed at it, shaking his head, offering a lower price. My father's shoulders slumped. He nodded slowly and took a crumpled $20 bill from the man. My chest felt incredibly heavy, but I did not cry. They look so ordinary, I whispered into the quiet car. For my whole life, I thought they were these huge, powerful people who controlled everything, but they are just ordinary, and they made terrible choices. Yes, Thaddeus said softly, looking at the house. They built a house out of sand, Serafina, and the water finally came. I watched my mother pull her sweater tight around her chest. For a tiny second, a small, weak voice inside my head whispered, "Go help them. You have money. You can save them." That was the old Serafina, the girl who paid for broken mailboxes to buy her family's love. But I looked at the green price stickers. I remembered the heavy black mourning dress at my wedding. I remembered the $285,000 cash offer for my only safe space. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. My parents demanded my loyalty just because we shared the same blood, but they never offered me any loyalty in return. I have seen enough, I said quietly, rolling the window back up. The soft hum of the glass closed out the sound of the estate sale. Take me home, Thaddeus. Thaddeus put the car in gear and drove us away from Maple Drive. I did not look back in the rearview mirror, not even once. It was Thursday, November 26, 2024, Thanksgiving Day. The Oak Street house smelled like roasted turkey, warm butter, and sweet cinnamon. Outside, the sky was a cold, dark gray, but inside my home, every light was on, shining brightly against the fresh linen white walls. I stood at my marble kitchen island, carefully pouring red wine into tall, clear glasses. Serafina, do we need more napkins on the table? Delphine asked. She walked into the kitchen carrying baby Orion. He was wearing a tiny, soft blue sweater. Delphine looked healthy. Her face was bright, and she had just received her first pay raise at Crescent Interiors. Yes, please, I smiled at her. The green cloth napkins are in the bottom drawer. Got it, she said, quickly grabbing them and walking back to the dining room. I looked into the living room. Thaddeus was sitting on the sofa, laughing with my best friend Callista and Aunt Elowen. Aunt Elowen had brought her famous sweet potato pie. She had apologized to me weeks ago, finally realizing the toxic games my parents had played. We were slowly rebuilding our relationship, based on truth this time. My parents were not there. On September 30th, the bank took the house on Maple Drive. With no money left, my parents had to move into a tiny, cramped one-bedroom apartment on the loud, busy east side of Atlanta. My father finally got a job working the cash register at a big chain hardware store. They were surviving, but the mask of their perfect wealthy life was gone forever. They tried to call me once in October. I did not answer. The boundary was set, thick and strong like a concrete wall. Dinner is ready, Thaddeus called out, standing up from the sofa. Everyone gathered around the long wooden dining table I had built with my own hands. Delphine sat next to me, feeding Orion a tiny piece of soft bread. Thaddeus sat at the head of the table, his warm hand resting gently over mine. I looked at the people sitting around my table. I saw no black clothes. I saw no fake smiles or hidden secrets. I just saw my real family. I raised my glass, listening to the soft, happy clinking sound. I was finally safe. If it reminded you of something you've been through or something you're still going through right now, please leave a comment. I read every single one, and I promise you, you're not alone in this. If you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. Sometimes one story is all it takes to make someone realize they're allowed to stand up. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I've linked another story in the description that I think you'll really want to hear. It's about a woman whose family tried to steal her inheritance. She didn't let them.